Hi, welcome to the Yorkshire Academy of American Football podcast. My name's Mike. I'm going to be chatting today with Coach Dale Bottomley, who heads up the Yorkshire Academy of American Football. He's also the head coach of Carnegie American Football, who are the reigning BUCS Premier Division champions. And he also has a Division 1 title under his belt from a couple of years ago. In addition to that, he works with the Junior Sports Academy at Leeds Beckett University's Carnegie faculty. He's a 3-time Coach of the Year winner, 2 times with the governing body BUCS, and once with double coverage, I believe. He's also the former head coach of the Leeds Carnegie Chargers and former head coach of the under-17s, and helped to set up the Yorkshire Academy of American Football. So we hope you enjoy it. Keep your eyes open. We're going to be doing a lot more podcasts in the future. And everybody stay safe and look after yourselves. Okay, hello, Coach Dale.
How are we doing?
I'm all right, yourself?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. In the current climate.
Yeah.
Climbing the walls with everything that's going on, but I'm sure you're keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, I guess we're all doing the best we can in very strange circumstances. So trying to keep in touch with coaches as well. So we're having meetings every week and with various different teams, and that kind of gives you a bit of a focus for that day or something. So it's all right.
Good. So I've got some questions to ask you. I hope you're ready to.
Let's go. Yeah.
Get on it. I thought we'd have a chat as well, and as we go along. But the first one it's the obvious one. How did you get involved in American football?
Yeah. So I started in the sport back in 2008 when I was at Leeds Beckett. It was then called Leeds Met University. I was a particularly talented athlete in other sports, and figured I dabbled in gymnastics and kung fu in my first year, and it got to Christmas time and I thought these probably aren't the sports for me, but luckily American football started. So the team Carnegie American Football, as it's known, started in about Christmas time, January time of my first year. So I thought I'd give that a go, and I was excited by the fact that it was a new program and I could be involved in something a bit different. So I gave that a go. I didn't actually get into the team, so I wasn't selected for that team for that year because that was an associate game to get into the mainstream league. So I had to play a friendly game to show we could play and all that stuff. And there was limited equipment. So ironically, I wasn't actually part of the first game. And looking back, having done so much with the sport over the past decade, it's quite funny to look back and think actually I wasn't even told I was good enough to play, but that kind of spurred me on. So I during that summer I worked hard on my fitness, and really gave me a real focus in those few months, and I came back and managed to get onto the team for that first proper season, and it kind of went from there. And I met a good few friends that I'm still friends with now on the team. One of them is Andy Fraser, who's the Assassins under-19s head coach. Also coaches the Carnegie O-line and special teams. So we've met quite a few people along the way that have had an impact on my football career. So that's where I started it off, and I went from there in terms of playing and then coaching.
And moving on from there, what got you involved in the coaching side of things?
I'd been a coach for different sports before that, so mainly normal football, soccer. So I coached in the US for a summer camp season, which was a lot of fun, and so I had like a very basic background in coaching. I was nowhere near an expert. I've got level 1s and level 2 courses done, but nothing more complex or high level than that. So I had a basic background, and I've always been interested in helping people develop. So as I finished my degree and came to my end of my academic life at Leeds Beckett, I was quite interested in bringing the sport of American football to like a new audience, and there wasn't really anything for kids in the region. I didn't get to play, and I thought, well, I'd love to have played when I was a kid. So we started with yourself, we started the academy, as it's known, Leeds Academy, in 2013, and I figured I'd try and make some kind of career from it, or get a job from it. So I just went self-employed and started coaching in schools and just got the sport going in a sense. And there wasn't really anything else in the region or any organisation in the region that could do what I could do in terms of going into schools during the day. It's very difficult for people that work full time to do that. So I quickly got a lot of hits in terms of going out to schools all across the north, really, in Manchester, across the Hull, and as far north as Sunderland and Middlesbrough, down to Sheffield, and the cost with that quickly added up. So it wasn't really sustainable long term. But luckily, the university was quite keen to bring the sport, that aspect of the sport in the region in house. So the academy kind of developed from there into where it is now. And
as far as earning an income from this, obviously we had the support of the university at the start of the academy, but there's quite a lot of pressure on you to begin with, wasn't there? Because it was basically your only income. You just graduated from your master's degree, and so there's quite a bit of pressure on there. Did you find the schools were receptive when you were approaching them, or was it something that you had to really sell hard?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sold itself in the fact that it was something different, and I think then and still now, schools, or even more so now, schools are pushed or are proactive in trying to find different sports and activities for kids. You obviously get your rugby, your hockey, your football and netball, and athletics in the summer, but the PE teachers and head teachers of primary schools were quite keen to give them something different. And I've never really had a young person not enjoy it in some way. So kind of after a few months, I figured out, well, every kid we've had will enjoy it, but they just don't know about it yet. So it was a push to get the word out that we existed, or the sport existed, and that they could play it, or they could book us for a session. But after that, it kind of flowed, and we got a lot of repeat bookings, and it was sustainable in some ways. Like, it would be a good part-time role for a graduate. And we still have some bookings with the academy. We often get one-offs or short 6-week blocks in primary schools, and it kind of depends on coach availability. And we have a few coaches that are of that kind of time in their life where they can go out during the day and don't have any commitments apart from maybe even a weekend job. So they can do that and go fulfill those commitments. But to have a full-time job doing it is very challenging. I think some people do it around the country, but it is difficult. And for me, I needed to do something a bit more comprehensive. So that was why I managed to get a role at Leeds Beckett to run American sports eventually.
Well, I've noticed in the sport, especially when they're talking about people who are paid to do this and the success of clubs, what seems to be the holy grail for a lot of people when they're talking about this on social media is, if we go into schools, then we're going to get loads of recruits. In your experience, and warts and all, please, Dale, in your experience, have you found that there's been good conversion from going into schools and people coming back into the academy on campus at Leeds Beckett?
On paper, it makes perfect sense. You go to a school, you do a session, a small percentage, whatever that is, 10, 15%, 20% will show interest, and then 5-10% will then come down to a session. If you get those return on numbers out of a class of 30, and you do that every day, then you're looking pretty good. But in our experience, it hasn't worked out like that. But we have, not in a pure number sense. That might have been because we were going to all over the region and county, and different barriers to participation in terms of travelling and costs were too great. But we have had, like, we'll call them like academy gems, where players like Lucy Peaty, who started her football journey coming to a school session at our school club at Roundhay High School. Her netball was cancelled, so came to our flag football session in 2014. And that, from there, she just went from strength to strength with the sport and just took off. She just loved it. And, now she's played for Great Britain, now competing down in Surrey for a university team. So, and obviously played for the Chargers for a while. So,
and with the Warriors women's team as well, I believe.
Just she didn't. I mean, she's barely got into her football career, and she's already done more than most people would ever have dreamed of. So, but that's one example of one of the players that's done much from a school session, and we've had a few others. 3 or 4 of the guys at Carnegie now studying have come through the academy, and they started at school session, but that's like a handful. So if you're just talking pure numbers, yeah, it can work, but it's a lot of legwork. And we've found now that social media is by far a more cost effective, and it's hard to describe the terminology, but it's just a better way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, better conversion.
Conversion, the amount of people or kids or young people or parents you can hit with one post by paying 50, 100 quid is way more than you could go into a school session. Like actually going to the school, delivering a session, it's going to be a half a day, 3-4 hours out of your day, or it can be. And the cost of getting there, you need funding to pay for a coach possibly, and equipment. So, I mean, if it's targeted and it's if you start a new club and it's, there's a few schools within a couple of miles, 2, 3, 4 miles, yeah, go for it. I mean, there's a school not far from where I live now that would love sessions, but it just doesn't really make sense, for us to do that. So we just don't have the resources, and it wouldn't, they wouldn't come to the session on a Saturday probably because it's too far. So there is a place for it, and it's been good for us in some ways when we're starting off, and you get to know teachers and get the organisation's name out there when you're starting off. So there is positives to it. You just got to be smart about it and really target it. And if it doesn't make sense, don't go out your way. If it doesn't make sense for your team or your program, you don't have to do every single session. You just got to be smart about it. But at the start, we just went scattergun and just went, let's just go everywhere and just what hits. And it worked. And now we're like, well, we've got the academy on a Saturday, we've got the sessions, we've got the age groups, got the coaches. How do we get more kids in from the bottom of the pathway? And that's more about marketing online nowadays, and really focusing on developing coaches as well.
And that seems counterintuitive, because what people perceive to be how it's going to work is, well, we'll get the ball into these kids' hands, and then they'll come to that awful build it and they'll come cliche. And counterintuitively, it doesn't work that way. It's actually seeing some static picture or a little bit of a video on an Instagram ad or whatever ad that we're running at the time. That seems to be the way to pull them in.
Yeah, I think so. And it comes from the NGB. So you've got FA, RFU, other more mainstream governing bodies, and they have that financial power, and they can get the backing from Sport England to then go and do projects. So, get into rugby or whatever it's called, or tag rugby, or they can do that, and they've got that funding to pay coaches, and they can have full-time coaches to go into schools to purely get participation numbers increased. We don't have that yet. Hopefully, there's been a few initiatives. There was the Touchdown Schools project. Something like that.
Rob Ruxby.
Brilliant.
Really great campaign, didn't he? Yeah.
But then you think, well, it's one person doing the whole country. I mean, it's a lot, And again, they were kind of saying yes to most things. So hopefully we can get to a point where, with the new BAFA CEO, and that role develops, we can get that funding to then pay coaches. And idea would be to have regional hubs. And then you have coaches that are based out of those, and they just go out to schools. I mean, the NFL Flag have done a lot of this in schools with us, and they found very similar things in terms of the logistics of getting student coaches into schools was difficult. The timetables change, the costs are quite high, so they're focusing more now on educating teachers and getting the teachers educated so they can deliver sessions on their own time and spending money on equipment. And then bringing him to a regional hub to have a tournament at the end. So then they've got that link up with like a local club. So That probably is another smart way of doing things and a cost-effective and efficient way of doing things. But
I think so. When you're funneling them through to something that's going to benefit from it, you've got to look at, let's take in our area in the city of Leeds. Leeds United will run a number of sessions with sending their coaches into schools and running it round for kids, but they're not looking for the next Patrick Bamford or, Calvin Phillips.
yeah,
What they're actually doing is trying to get fans for Leeds United. And if those kids then go off to play for Hunslet, Seacroft, etc., I think that's more the way that those NGBs are working with this, and the RFU in particular have been quite aggressive in our region, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, Leeds Rhinos have got a full community program, and they're delivering different other sports too. They've got a monopoly in some ways on that. So when she's great, I mean, to get kids active in any way is fantastic. But
totally.
for our sport, it's difficult. So if you can run a really good, well-rounded youth team program, whatever age group that is, and kids enjoy it, and you're getting new players every year, then that's great. And if you can develop coaches at the same time, and just grow and grow year on year until you've got all the age groups in that full pathway, and there's examples of that around the country, I think that's brilliant. And that's a positive organisation. So that's kind of where we're at now, and we're lucky to have a base at the university, and we've got good links with the other university team, Leeds Griffins, that aren't far away, and with that relationship's building, and that's really positive now.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've got Rams on campus, so we've got the adult team, and obviously the women's team, the Leeds Chargers, who are still going strong, and they're based on campus, and hopefully they'll be around for a long time yet. So
flag team Samurai, they're going from strength to strength, aren't they?
Samurai, and they've got, I mean, I was speaking to Kyle Taylor. They've done phenomenal work there. A few of the guys have done great work.
And he's just linked up with the NGB as well, hasn't he? He's now looking after the scheduling, isn't he?
Yeah, he's doing brilliantly. And rather than us create a flag team and add them to our pathway and make we don't need to do that, because we've got a great program already. Why? Let's be efficient and smart with it, and have them as the main opportunity to play flag football in the area. And they've got three, maybe it might even be 4 teams now. So they've got men's, open age, 1, 2, and 3, I think, and a women's specific team, the Samurai team. So, I mean, they've got 60 plus players. They've got more than the adult contact team has. So it's brilliant, and they've kind of professionalized it, in my opinion, and it's worked wonders. So and they've worked within their budget. They're using the campus when it's good, when it's not great weather or it's dark, and then when they don't need to use it, they'll go and play it round day when there's a good pitch there. So really smart way of working, and they're going to go. I mean, they might even get to 100 players at some point.
Yeah.
So
it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. I like you say that probably was one of the better decisions, really. Almost subcontracting the flag side of things out to people who know it better than you and I did at the time, and subsequent coaches who've come in at the time. That did seem to be the sensible thing to do. But it just brought to mind then, we were talking the other day about this, and you were telling me about how your role has changed. And we're talking about the club developing there, and how we've added these different things to the academy. But tell me more about what your role is now, because you started out as a coach, and how would you describe your journey, and tell us more about what you're doing now specifically?
Yeah, I mean, like any coach, or most coaches, I started out as an assistant, like a positional coach. So I coached the Carnegie team, they coached their quarterbacks in 2013, 2014. And then very quickly I was thrust into a head coach role, really. So with the academy, the under 17s, there was no one else to be that lead coach. So, was it perfect time? Probably not. But, I've gone from being an assistant to a head coach in less than a year. Very, very challenging, but the kids were great, and because they didn't know a lot, I was always ahead of them a little bit. So I was more than happy to coach them. I felt confident in coaching them, and we did really well that year. And then at the same time, I think I was coaching the Chargers in their first season. Just started up really, and that was challenging in a different way. So I was going from coaching young people under the age of 16 in the same week, coaching adult females. So that was very, very different, so having to change the way you coach every week, because both those groups needed something different from me. Made a lot of mistakes, but learned a lot. And then from there, we started up the under 19s team. So again, head coached them and passed the 17s on to Will Babington. So again, I was like just moving up and helping people develop and get in there and replace where I'd been really. That's kind of been my plan. I mean, not that I really planned it out, but that's the way it's gone. And I think going forward, that'll be more of a conscious effort to do that. So I'll develop a team and then, or part of a team, and then hopefully someone can then replace what I've done and improve it, and I can move on to something else. So the 1917 had the younger kids with the flag, UFL, our little community like in-house league, which is great. And then moved on to coaching the university team when Coach Paul Wake decided to move on after 7 seasons, and he'd created a really strong program there for me to build on. So yeah, I mean, I've coached a few teams as a head coach, and probably head coach more than I have been in any other role. So, but in all those teams, I've had to coach position as well at the same time, which is a challenge, and that's something that maybe I'm not going to do next year. Maybe focus more on coaching the coaches, which is mainly the point of your question. So my role's kind of moved more to being that more typical head coach or leader of an organization, I think. Again, it wasn't really planned out to be perfectly in that way, but I think that's really what the academy or the sport needs in this area anyway, for the teams I'm involved in, is being able to help those younger coaches. We've got a couple of the assassins that are helping out with the university team and just being assistants, but you can tell they already want to start to actually coach or help players develop in some way. So helping those guys and trying to help facilitate the more experienced coaches to develop. It's not really going to be me telling them this is what you've got to do, blah blah blah. Not a dictator, because it's my learning too. It's more setting up ways that we can all improve. Kind of round table discussions, like setting, and that's what we're doing at the moment online, which has been a really good way of doing it. Is setting a topic or a way of thinking or a review of what we've done and having a discussion about it as peers and challenging each other. So yeah, I've become more of a developer and trying to educate myself on coach development, which is probably an area that is going to grow as the sport grows, I think. You've got the more formal education courses like level 1, level 2s, but it's like getting a driving license. Once you've got that, then really you go and learn. You do a lot of it, most of it. And we had a chat yesterday about how we learn, and vast majority of what coaches learn and people learn will be informally, while a few chats, discussions, online meetings, or just looking up your stuff yourself, reading books or going on YouTube and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think I've become more of a overseer, but setting tone, setting the standards, and helping people develop, as opposed to specifically coaching a position or individuals, which I do enjoy a lot. So I don't really want to ever get away from that too much, but there'll be, I guess, where I've got the luxury is I have time during the day to meet some of the university players. So, for example, last season we'd have Jason and Fraser would do a lot of the offense, and I'd coordinate, but it'd be a lot of discussion about what we'd do, and we'd kind of set the plan together in a lot of ways. But then I'd have time during the day to then go and meet our quarterback Connor, who was who played brilliantly last year. But we'd have time to meet and look at huddle, so we'd sit down for an hour and meet. And so I'd kind of coach him individually, although Jason Shaw was kind of leading that position group, but I'd have the luxury of having that time. So yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the threads that seems to be going through that is that you don't really sound to have a fear of delegation. It's something you're quite comfortable doing, putting out tasks to not only tasks that one may describe as mundane for fear of being told off, but also some quite important elements of your role as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the most obvious examples are having put or asked other coaches to become head coaches within the academy. So I mean, I've known Fraser for a long time, and he's been brilliant. And we've got Chris Jones helping the under-19s. He's moved from just being a kind of position coach for 17s and helping Carnegie and being a player for Carnegie to now doing the defense. And we did an online classroom session the other week, and that was awesome to see him do that. And it was all sound football stuff, and being able to kind of sit in on that and listen to him talk about football is, it was just fantastic to see how much he's now imparting that knowledge onto kids, which is awesome. Frey's taking the under-19s and Will taking the 17s and seeing them improve, and then they're now leading their staff and helping their staff develop. So I'm kind of conscious of stepping on people's toes now, really, because they're doing a great job. I mean, doing a better job than I did when I started. So, and it's the same with the university team, with having the coordinators. So Dave Rowlands, OD as is known, has been the assistant head coach for a while, since I've taken over as head coach, and he's done the defense. And ever since I started as a head coach, I said, look, I want you to be involved. You could be a head coach in your own right of any university team, really. You've got that ability and that knowledge and that experience, but I'd love to have you as a DC and to just take the defense and do whatever you want with it, so I've done that, and it's been phenomenal, and we kind of challenge each other on our ideas almost every week. So and I guess on delegation, you just got to put your trust in people, I think, haven't you? And if you don't trust them, then that's on you, as you've not helped them develop enough or given them opportunities to do that. So, and learn not to be worried if they make mistakes, because you as a coach made mistakes in the past. So, it's if we're gonna have a different OC or a different coordinator and they call some plays or have a game plan and it doesn't work out, well, who's to say your plan would have worked out? If it's sound football and it makes sense before the game, then I'm happy with that. If they're confident that they can coach all the elements of the offense or defense and it makes sense in relation to the players, then I'm fine with that. So yeah, it's an art form, it's a skill you've got to learn in delegation. And again, like I said, I've got more time than other coaches, so I'm conscious of not delegating too much of the stuff, because I can get that done during the day a lot of the time. So I try and take off, like you say, some of the more mundane tasks, booking facilities, booking our training camp, organising fixtures, doing the rosters. If I can just get those done, then that just means the coaches kind of focus on coaching, and that's what they're there to do, and that's what they enjoy.
Well, talking about the structures of coaching, etc. One of the things I did want to ask you was, without going too deep into the X's and O's, but more really as what advice you give out. Why option football? And could you give any advice to other coaches?
Yeah. So I mean, when I first began with Carnegie, we'd already used a lot of option before. When I first started as head coach, so I played in an offense I used option football, and then Coach Paul Wake was keen on. He carried it on for a few years, and we used various forms of option, and I kind of carried on that offense on that style of football when I took over, because it made sense, and that was what I knew, and also we had those kind of players that would fit that style of football. So Leeds Beckett it's got two campuses, so there's barriers to getting players or students that are keen to play sport from the city campus to play in Headingley. It's a couple of miles, and that is actually quite a big challenge for the sports department as a whole to get students that are based in the city to play sport. So that means that we don't get quite as many people down to trial sessions. There's a strong rugby presence, so we've got a very successful rugby league program. Their first and second team there, they've won 12 championships in the past 15 years, something like that. So really successful.
It's fair to call them a powerhouse, I think, isn't it?
I think more than you could ever imagine. Phenomenal team. And the rugby union program now is even stronger than it has been in previous years. So the BUCS Super Rugby team, they're playing the highest level of university rugby, and they've got 5 or 6 teams below that, and social rugby where they, it's more relaxed. So they've got a lot of opportunities to play contact sport. Are we going to get that many people down to sessions and down to those initial practices? Probably not. And you can hope each year, but at some point you're going to go, well, that's just how we are. You can keep trying to find different ways to recruit and market your program, absolutely, and improve that a little bit each year, but you kind of know what you're going to get each year. We're not going to get 7 or 8 true offensive linemen that are heavy and strong, or in a more traditional sense. We're going to get maybe 2-3 of those guys at most, and then have our tackles that are more like defensive ends. So a lot of our players will play both ways too, especially on the line. That's just how it is. That's how we are. Do we want to be that? In my opinion, in an ideal world, no, but that's what we've got to work with, and that's what we do. So option football helps that. It helps a smaller type of offensive line, definitely the tackles, being able to block people that are a similar size, because you won't be blocking a lot of the time a very similar body type to a normal lineman. Like you'd be blocking a linebacker or double teaming a defensive lineman. So it helps them be successful. They're faster, a little bit lighter, so they can go and block a linebacker or a safety or double team on the defensive tackle, as opposed to having to block a defensive end one-on-one. We tend to be quite athletic and fast and a bit smaller. So, it makes sense for us. We adapt it each year. Our scheme changes slightly depending on who we have. And the main principle is that it suits our players, so we adapt it based on them. And it's also what we know as coaches. And there's kind of a balance with that. So, to those newer coaches that are setting up an offense or creating a scheme for the first time, my advice would be to make sure that you start with the players and then kind of add in what and then adapt it from there. Like, it's not just with the players. It's, if you don't know an offense, go and research it, learn about it, and kind of mold those two together to something that definitely suits the players. So that's why we run it. It makes sense. We've had success with it. Sometimes we haven't been successful with it, but we've never really thought, we would have done. If we've not won a game, we go, well, we would have done better with that offense. We never really thought that. We might call different play or use different formation or made a different call at a certain time, but we've never thought, I wish we'd have just installed this offense instead. So yeah, it kind of makes sense to us, and it's a lot of fun to be involved in. Maybe not that much fun to watch unless you're a purist, especially in like playoff games or final, but.
Well, I'm definitely one of those.
Yeah, there was a few purists around the country, so.
Yeah. I love the way people normally explain, well, it's just 4 yards and a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. But, like you say, to the purist, it's a thing of beauty. When you see these minuscule little windows of opportunity and gaps that are exploited by it, and then all of a sudden from nowhere, poof, there's someone running down the field, and there's a big pile of bodies at the other end, and he just looks like mayhem. But that's one of the things. But so I suppose to say in précis about what you were just saying, then it's you play the hand you dealt. Really, if you have these players, then choose this offense.
I'd say that for sure. It's you've got to know. Most coaches will have their favorite offense, but it's got to suit the players you have, or it can't be far removed from what they're really good at. You might not have a perfect knowledge of an offense, but I think sometimes as coaches we get in the way of players playing really. We overcoach sometimes, I think, because it's our passion, and we spend so much time on it and analysing games and game planning, and maybe sometimes if you just said, right lads, here's a few plays and formations, create me an offense, they might be quite good at it. They might just so it's something.
Are you saying there that you actually give the lads the chance to be creative? You give the players the chance to be creative within the framework that you've given them.
I think there's a time and a place for it. Yeah, I think we might do that more. We might not, but it's certainly something I'm thinking about during this enforced break. We certainly get input from the players. Across the board on all three phases of the game, and we like to in the way players have. It's a new generation. Different generation of players, and the way society is, the way they want to be coached in general, it's definitely morphed and changed since I was coached, and that's not long ago. So that giving them input, makes them feel like they're contributing a bit more and they're valued. And will we always agree to what they want to do? Probably not. We don't. But there are some times when they've got an idea, and we always want to encourage that, and not just shout them down, because sometimes we don't know best, and they're the ones playing the game. So if they have an idea for a call, or adding something in, or a wrinkle, or a formation, and it makes football sense, and we agree with it, and we've got no problems in adding that in. There's examples of where we've done that, examples of where we've not agreed to it, or we don't think it'll work, and we've said why. But I think in general it's important to involve players in that process. But yeah, there's definitely a balance to be had with it. Especially at the higher levels. Higher level, I mean BUCS football, and at the youth level. For example, you go back to kids flag, UFL. Those guys, we don't give. We just play. Before we did the UFL, we sometimes have practices or training sessions where they just play a game, and some of the plays they come up with are fantastic, are brilliant, and
aren't they? Yeah.
And do they make football sense? Probably not to me on paper, but they're just awesome, and they're creative, and it involves them, and it improves their interest in the game, and it's exciting. So there's a balance, and you've got to walk that line, quite smartly as a coach, I think.
And going back to playing the hand that you dealt, as far as players that are available to you are concerned, people have noticed in the last few years that you've had quite a few import players coming over, and that's raised the bar. Would you say it's raised the bar?
Yeah.
Want to tell us a bit more about how you've done that at Leeds, Beckett, at Carnegie?
Yeah. Well, we've had 7 over the past 2 seasons, 3 last year, 4 this year, from the US. We've had a handful from other countries. And they've added to the team in so many different ways. There's perceptions in Britball about scholars, and they mainly come from people that don't have them. We won't get into the financials, but the financials aren't the reason why they're here. If a lot of those guys have come from really good programs, and they want to carry on their football career for another year, get a good degree, have a great experience, and enjoy their life experience in Leeds and the UK, and the positives they bring to the program and our team are endless. Are they taking people's spots? That's the comment we sometimes get. I guess you could look at it that way, but we have players that are better this year than they would have been if they're American players weren't with us, because they've helped them develop a huge amount, not only on the field and their technique and their pushing them to develop, but also in the gym, strength conditioning program, generally pushing them to be a better person. I think they've not done that intentionally, but they've been that role model for them. You know, one of the guys we had said about one of the American players, he was actually in hospital just getting some treatment, and after one of our games, and he's okay now, but he was chatting to me, oh, where's this guy? I won't name him. He's like a brother to me. You know, I need to speak to him. You know, I'm so glad that those guys are over here from America. They're just awesome for the team. And that was just like really informal feedback, but you know, that was great to hear. So, you know, I'm always conscious of when we first started to recruit from the US, well, what's the perception going to be? How are British players going to react to it? But there's been nothing but positives that have come from it. There've been captains. I mean, we had Cam last year, who was a captain. Brian acted like a captain. Yeah, just probably the best player I've ever been around in Britain. Phenomenal. I think most people would say that. Cam had a great attitude, and we had PJ, who was a really good guy, and brought a lot to the team as well. And they've gone back, had a great degree, experience here. Still keeping in touch with them. And the same for the 4 guys we've had this year. We've been really lucky. All 7 guys we've had over the past 2 years have added to the program in their own way, in their own unique way. Been great football players, performed well, but actually their impact's been greater in the sense of helping improve other players from Britain and other countries, and helping us push us as coaches, because it's great to coach guys that really know football and will challenge you, and you know, it's fun to coach talented players. They've all, I think you'd say that they were all the better players on the team, but there's definitely been a handful each year of British guys or European guys that are of a similar standard or really not far off. So, you know, we play other teams that have American players, and we love as coaches going up against them, you know, because it's really good football. You know, we speak to Coach Jonathan Rooney up in Durham, and a couple of the other coaches around the country, and it's really fun to go up against them. And actually, we've had to plan around British players too. You know, there've been some really good homegrown players that we've had to really adjust things for in some way. So it isn't just, it's Americans coming over. And I think, you know, we're going to keep on adding these guys, because the impact positive it really is. And they've not just helped the university team, they've been fantastic. You've seen it with our academy guys. I mean, they're just role models. Even your son Miles, you know, who really looks up to Sean Cubitt Miller. You know, he's talking to him about music and how he can help with that. So, and Derek Florence has had a fantastic experience here from what I've seen, and he's into his arts, his music, and his performance. You know, and he's doing great things with that. So, yeah, I mean, kind of to sum it up.
I think just before you sum it up, I think, because I was just curious to know that I think a lot of universities who don't have scholarship, or university football teams that don't have scholarship players, often the misnomer is that vast amounts of money are being thrown at these players. But actually, the reality is that a postgraduate education is quite expensive in America, isn't it? And cheaper option often is to come over to the UK and come back and say, well, actually, my master's degree is from Britain.
Yeah. It's when I chat to guys that are interested in coming over here, that comes up in conversation quite a lot. I mean, the term scholars is a broad way of looking at it, and it's got a bit of a negative sound. I think it's become a negative term. I think in some ways, like, we should apologise for having players that are from the US. The football landscape is how it is. You know, we come up against teams that have had more than us, maybe a lot more. The perception is we have a loads. I guess that's the word that has been described, how it's been described, and it's just not the case. But we don't really mind. We know what we are. We want to, as a coaching staff, our philosophy, part of that is to help. We don't ever want to get away from helping the brand new rookie British, player, or that has started the sport for the first time at Leeds Beckett. We don't ever want to get away from helping them become the best player they can be. That's the absolute core. That's the core of what we have. When we add in talent from different places too. We had Alex Voith, who was from Austria, and he was at Essex University before, and he came and did a master's, and he was fantastic for us. Really good in the gym. So he helped improve that. He hardly played because of injuries, unfortunately, but his encouragement and he led by example throughout the whole year in terms of his dedication to his strength conditioning. He definitely inspired players, even though he may not think that. So it's fun to have them here, and our team's full of players from all over the world. I mean, you're talking about American players, but I can probably name 12 or 13 different countries that players have come from or originated or grew up in. So
Hong Kong, Poland, all over the shop. Yeah.
Sweden, Jamaica, Canada,
the Bahamas,
Lithuania, yeah, all over. Malaysia, Australia. So we can list them, and that's really fun. I don't know too much about specifics of other university teams, but I'd be surprised if there were many that had the so many players from different places and different backgrounds, and I guess even social classes in some way. It just a vast array of different people and different values. So to get these players in a room and get them all fighting for each other and trying to head towards that same goal, working towards that same goal, is probably the thing that I enjoyed the most, and it's the most challenging. I guess as a constant with the coaches that are going to be there every year, but every team's unique in its own way, and it's fun to see guys become friends. Like, you think there's no way in other than football that these two guys would be going and getting a drink together. Like it just wouldn't happen. Football is a fantastic way to bring people together from different walks of life, and that's probably the thing that I enjoy the most.
As far as being a paid coach, and we have spoken about this before, as far as being a paid coach is concerned, do you feel there's extra pressure on you to come up with results? And if so, what are those results? Because you're actually getting a paycheck at the end of the month for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, it's coaching the university team is part of my role. It probably become even less as we go forward, but obviously I'm going to spend more time than I sometimes should on the team itself, because it's my passion. So I'll be up till late at night speaking to players or potential recruits or doing some social media stuff or whatever. But that there is the only pressure that exists is the pressure that I put upon myself. So I did an interview with a PhD candidate a few years ago, and she was doing her major project, her thesis on pressures, within sports coaching on sports coaches, and it was interesting to discuss that and think about that. And I kind of figured that really the only pressure is what I put on myself. Unfortunately, the university and the athletic union specifically is their philosophy and way of doing things is more about the student experience, and if they're having a positive experience, becoming better students and becoming more employable and enjoying what they do within the sport at university across whatever sport they're involved in, and then that's good, that's fine. So results at Leeds Beckett aren't the be all and end all. Although obviously, it's you want to win. That's one of the reasons why you have a team. But luckily, it's not focused on that. I mean, I think Sheldon Campbell asked me one time on the way to a coaching session at school, Coach, so like, could you get fired if we don't win? You know, and I felt like going, yeah. So you better play harder, mate. But I said, no, it's not like that. You know, well, would this coach in this university get fired if he didn't win? Like, luckily, no, I don't think so. You know, unless it was like, you know, unless we were so bad, and then it was year on year, we didn't recruit, you know, anyone in, and students were actually the main thing is students, if they fed back something negative constantly for a year, you know, then that would be an issue. But fortunately, no, we've got a lot of back in the university, but we've had to work hard for that. You know, you've been part of that as well through the academy. So, you know, and the players have been the main people that have worked hard to improve that relationship. You know, in lots of different ways. So, you know, we've done well to win some awards at the University Sports Awards, but that's been down to the players, like really committing to those goals and working hard at it. And
in a wider forum as well, of course, the Sports Leeds awards, which don't sound that prestigious to those people who aren't from the area, but they're extremely prestigious. They have some very big winners in the past. The Marcelo Bielsa, likes of him, and the Brownlee brothers, and etc. It's a huge, big, swanky occasion, and of course the university team, the American football team, has been nominated in awards for that. Yourself, last year, I was privileged to go with you and your partner and your mum and dad to attend that, and yeah. I think that the success of the university, not just within the success of the team, not just within the university, but also in a wider area, has been quite a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to, again, it goes back to the first point, you know, we started with, is just trying to get people to know the sport exists, really, and that you know, there's lots of different ways to get involved, and luckily we now have opportunities for anyone to play the sport, whatever they want to do, whether it's contact or non-contact, you know, or whatever age they are or ability level. So we've got that now, which is, we've got some really great people running various parts of the whole academy. Yeah, so I mean, we're still trying to improve awareness, and anything that we can do to do that, you know, is good. And you know, things like charity events are always a great way of doing it. And I think all the teams have do something over the past 2 or 3 years for charity. So, and just representing the sport well.
The big cycle ride that you did across all the campuses. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we did that summer 2018 for CALM, so the campaign against living miserably. Leeds Griffins have done a lot of work for them. It's really great to see a lot, and they're still doing that now. But we decided we wanted a challenge. Myself, Jason Shaw, Dave, and Andy Fraser decided.
Jones.
And Jonesy, yeah, he was a partial cyclist and chief driver, logistics officer, and all that. He's a great support guy to have as well. But yeah, we decided we want to do something football related, but I didn't mind cycling. I've done a bit of cycling before. A couple of the guys are much more keen. You know, they've got a couple of bikes, and Jason loves the challenge. He loves to keep himself busy, so he bought a bike as well, and we kind of got to a level where we were competent enough. And the other couple, like Andy and Dave, were a lot more competent than I was. But I guess the motivation was that it's for charity, so that's what motivated me, you know, when I was ploughing through those miles. But yeah, we started in Derby, went to Nottingham really quickly. So we'd done half our journey within about 2 hours. And then we had to go to Durham and then Stirling, which was a heck of a long way. It was over 400 miles. In fact, on the second day, No, the first day we figured it. We thought ahead, so we needed to do 400 miles in 4 days. That was kind of our tagline. We were kind of set on doing that. So the first day we needed to do a 110 or 115, something like that, probably a bit more even miles, and we could have got to our end point for the night a lot quicker, but we wanted to add on a few miles to make sure we got to 400 overall. And as it happened, we didn't even need to do that, so we did another 20 miles for no reason. We thought back and knackered, but no, it was a lot of fun. I look back and think that's a long way, but it was worth it. We raised what, £4,000 for Calm, I think, and a little bit for the team as well. So we gave £500 to the team. We just capped it there, and that helps book our training camp each year. So that was a lot of fun, and I think we're looking to do something similar with the team next year. We're going to kind of improve our team building with the program, and try and get one or two big challenges set up for the players and coaches to do. So we'll figure that out as we go forward.
So overall, taking everything into consideration, what do you think is the biggest lesson you've ever learnt in football? I
don't think there's been a specific time, or I can't pinpoint a point where I've thought, yeah, that's something I've learned, but it's more how my philosophy's developed. I think over the past few years, it started off. We were talking the other day about why we coach, and it started off with, right, I've got to prove myself. I've got to show I can coach. I've got to win games, probably, really, to show that I'm a good coach. And that's one indicator, or it can be an indicator, but it's certainly nowhere near the only indicator you're a good coach. So over the past few years, I think it's developed more into helping people and seeing them progress. And if they achieve what they want to achieve in that season, they're not just wins, then I feel I've done a good job. And I think what we're trying to focus more on now, and certainly me individually, is individual connections with players. So you've got to really get to know them and build that relationship. As a coaching staff, we've done that well in sometimes we haven't done that, and we've learnt from it, and I certainly have. So I think it's once you've got that relationship in some way built, and that rapport and that trust both ways with a player, you can then, all the team stuff kind of falls into place mostly.
You'd say it's, if there's one big thing, it's communication. Would you say something?
Yeah, communication is definitely, and positive communication, and building that relationship with individuals, and that can be coaches too. You have to have that relationship with your coaching staff, whether you're whatever position coach you are, or whatever level you're coaching at, and that goes across all sports, I think. And I think I've listened to a lot of podcasts recently, and I think one of the common themes across all those, whether it's sport related or not, in terms of leadership and coaching, is that you need to have that rapport with players or people, and be authentic as a coach. So you need to be honest and as transparent as you possibly can be. You can't be perfectly transparent all the time, but kind of doing what you say you're going to do and sticking to it, and that helps build that rapport, build that relationship with your players. So I think that's probably the main thing. That's how I've developed over the years, and kind of the one thing I would try and get across to new coaches, as I did. The trap is you fall into is, right, I've got to learn this skill and teach this skill. Okay, well, that player sometimes won't rate knowing that skill as highly as actually you want him to, having that trust in you, so it's not just about coaching technique, it's, you have to have that rapport. And if you've got that, then they'll want to try hard for you, and you'll try harder for them, and it works in lots of different ways.
Well, then it seems to me that maybe authenticity, that seems to be across this, we've been chatting now for nearly an hour, and it seems to be across the whole thread across it is an authenticity. it coming across authentic. We've spoken about this before, and about, what primary motivations, maybe altruism or philanthropy, or is that something that has guided you really?
Yeah, I mean, we can call it philanthropy, or but we get some as coaches. I mean, you've been a coach too, and we all get something out of it as well. So, whether it, for me, obviously, it's part of my job. So, I'm kind of different in that way. But I wouldn't go to the lengths that I go to if I didn't care about the players, or I didn't really enjoy it, or I didn't want to see them improve. And that's, when they improve, or they've learned something not just about football, or they're thankful for your time, then that's really the satisfaction that I get as a coach. And I think probably most of the coaches that we have involved at Beckett in various teams would probably say similar things. So yeah, I mean, I'm driven by helping people, and football is a way to do that, I think. And I'm sure that'll develop over time, probably, in terms of my way of thinking. But that's probably where I'm at now. And I think our staff, we've got very common. I would say we've got very common philosophies, all a bit different, but we're kind of on the same page with a lot of it. But then at the same time, not afraid to challenge each other as well. So yeah, I think making sure players are improving in some way, even if it's like one thing, if they can say they've improved, then I'm satisfied with the job I've done in that given season.
Would you say? Oh God, completely lost my thread there. Sorry, Miles and my wife are just shouting in the background.
Not tea time yet, is it?
No, not yet. No. Good that we've been trapped away for 3 weeks now, nearly, and it's fairly amicable. It sounds like they're laughing. I was going to ask you about you went to Florida last year. Tell me a little bit more about that, and feel free to name drop as much as you want.
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate to be able to get over to the US a couple of times now. So most recently, I went in August and September last year with Coach Adam Lillis, who is from London area, plays and coaches for the Kent Exiles. So he was going to get out there. He'd got a contact, Julian Alonso, who was a GA. It's a tight ends GA at Florida Gators, and he'd got that link up, and he was going to go over, and he was trying to find someone to go with because he was going to be a bit lonely or bored on his own. So he was trying to find someone, and obviously most people have got full-time jobs and not in sport, so it was very difficult for them to find that time, and costly, or they've got wife and kids or whatever. So I think I was quite far down his list of coaches to ask. I know I was fine with that, but I knew him through the BUCS SAG Sports Advisory Group, so that was the BUCS football committee. So there's 3 of us on that, and that's how I knew him. So he asked if that was of interest to me, and I figured it out. I was like, absolutely, I'm definitely. So I went over there 3 weeks to Florida, and just in the 3 weeks, spent time with their staff, and it was just all access. We couldn't hope for better access. All access. Unbelievable. Just sit in whatever meeting you want. Just
living at Dan Mullen's house, were you? Or
well, not quite that much access. I'm sure it's a nice house though. Yeah. But yeah, we were in the GA's room, offensive GA's room, for most of the time, and I mean, just keeping ourselves busy, looking at when their coaches were busy, then we'd just make ourselves scarce. You want to get in the way, it was. But actually, after a couple of days, I said, look, just be pushy and be get in there. If you want to get in a meeting, just go in. Don't have to keep asking. And if we're going through the game plan for the Saturday game, and we've started the meeting, just come in. So it was like, well, you're just part of the group now. Of course, you're not going to start chatting in meetings and stuff like that. You're just going to keep yourself quiet. But they were more than happy for us to sit in there, find a spot, I mean, even one time they were going to come in on a Sunday evening for a review of the game. It was a Miami Hurricanes game. It was the college football. I think it might have been the opener even last season. So we came on a Sunday to review. The coaches had been there for quite a while, and Dan Mullen came in, and he was just getting up every now and then to go for a walk, or they'd be chatting about something on social media, some memes on Twitter that they'd found, and you know, just like our staff would it.
Yeah.
On a Tuesday night before a team meeting, like very similar ways of just chatting and spitballing random ideas and stuff. And then they'd get to the serious stuff, and then they'd have a pause, and then he ordered some milkshakes. You know, do you want a milkshake? I was like, yeah. You know, so he went off and got them. You know, forgetting he earns a few $1 million, so he wasn't above. I was like, do you want some dollars for it? Like, I earn 5 whatever million, so
I think I can run to that.
Yeah, I can stretch to a milkshake.
Yeah.
But yeah, access was brilliant. Watched the practices. Watched their home game against UT Martin. That was kind of a smaller game, like it was a bit of a blowout, but had a great experience there. On the sideline for that game.
The year before, tell us about what happened then. You went over to Texas.
Yeah, went over to Texas. But before I went to Texas, I was with Coach Needs and Coach Bonvetti up in Delaware. So I did a visit to Naval Academy, saw their practice, and then headed down to Tennessee. I went to see Carson Newman with Coach Dave Needs' son. Had a great few days there. Saw their home game on a Thursday night.
They run the split back veer, don't you? Because it was a little bit of an option road trip, wasn't it? Because of course at Navy they're running out the flex bun, they're running triple option out the flex bun, and you go down to Carson Newman where they're running the split back veer.
Yeah, it was awesome, you know, and to have that time with the coaches, and again, they were very open to discussing ideas, and they even wanted to know what I thought of the game, and you know, it was great, mate.
Yeah.
But no, it was good because I felt like I knew what I was talking. You know, they knew what I was talking about, or I knew what they were talking about. You know, so I didn't feel totally out of my depth that year.
Yeah.
Even at Florida, it was really good because me and Adam, I thought I'd go there, and some of the stuff they were talking about, I know. Obviously, the schematics of their offense was very different to what I knew, so that would be the same for anyone really, because it was different offense and different terminology. But I quickly figured it out mostly, so I could hold my own in a conversation, which I couldn't have done a few years ago. So I've gained a lot of confidence from that. No, actually, we do know quite a lot in the UK. Obviously, not nowhere near the level of those guys, but you can hold a conversation with them. So I was a lot of fun. And that was a huge learning opportunity, and got some great contacts too in the sports about networking and their work ethic more than anything, I think, and the lengths they'd go to game plan. And
I think you're right there. The work ethic really comes across. I mean, it's something that we talk about quite a lot in this country about the amount of time that we concentrate on the sport, but then actually when you go over there, it's then next level, isn't it? Because literally 14, 15 hours a day on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's very hierarchical as well. So, but you have people to do all that stuff. You've got the GAs, and you've got the assistant coaches, and then you've got your coordinators, obviously, and the head coach. So it all filters down. And the way Florida ran their team was very similar to Carnegie in the structural sense. That had all those titles, and as a head coach, I was more with the offense, like Dan Mullen was, and he largely left the defense to DC, obviously keeping tabs on it. But it was a very similar way of operating, but obviously there's millions of dollars involved, and it's at a very high level of football. Full-time coaches across the board, and fantastic facility, a huge amount of history. So it's equivalent of like a Leeds United, in the sense of the fans, and probably even more so. So it's a proper professional sports team in my eyes, albeit at university. And the home game was great. We did the gator walk into the stadium. Managed to borrow a suit, and in 35-degree heat, walk into the stadium, with the fans either side, which was a surreal experience. It's kind of in one of those sitcoms where the camera would pause, the actor would look at the camera and go, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
What an experience, and very inspiring. And then you try and take back what you've learned to what we do with the academy in Carnegie. So then you start to kind of filter out all the stuff. Like, we can't do that. That's not going to work. That's too much. Certainly in terms of the analysis, you just can't go to those lengths. So you've got to be really smart and efficient with what you do as a coach over here, because you don't have the time. The main thing is the amount of time they can spend is astronomical compared to what we have. So, but yeah, it was fantastic, and hopefully we've laid a little bit of a pathway there for other coaches to go and visit. I mean, the 4 or 5 coaches that were at Florida that season have now moved on to high positions at other universities, which is the nature of the sport over there. So, we've now, me and Adam have got contacts in various different teams now. So hopefully at some point we can ask them for another favour and help other coaches to get over there. And I think Adam's done a podcast. We listened to that the other day, and that's brilliant. He's got Ken Sambisi on there, who spent a few hours with us in his office just talking football on a Sunday evening. So he's getting a few guys on there and helping give back to the sport. So we both wanted to make it a trip not only for us, but to then help improve or help other coaches improve their knowledge back in the UK in some way. Yeah, and he's certainly doing that. I'm probably doing it more in terms of the specific teams we have in Lee at Beckett. So, but I've certainly helped in some way, I think, or I hope.
Well, thanks to you for paying it forward and for chatting with me. It's been a pleasure as always, and look forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, make sure you stay home, stay safe, and speak to you soon. Cheers, Dale.
Thanks, mate. See you later. Bye.
Bye.